But right now, let me welcome back to the show Ozzie Jurek. Ozzie, we've been chronicling. Oh, that's a busy signal from Ozzie. That won't work. But we've been chronicling what's the fall in prices have been so far across the greater Vancouver area. It has an impact, though, a ripple effect throughout the country. I mean, number one is British Columbia has been leading the country when it comes in terms of economic growth. And a lot of that, well, the number one industry has been construction, has been residential real estate. Commercial's also been part of that equation. That's been huge. Same thing going on in Toronto, where their market continues to be very hot. But again, it has repercussions because if you're looking for, we have federal help, well, that's impossible because it's not a one-size-fits-all. Different markets have different experiences. But that's one of the reasons we've been chronicling exactly what's been going on in the Vancouver market. So, Ozzie, we've got the latest numbers, and what did they tell you?
Well, the interesting thing is that, when you listen to the news, prices are higher, sales are down 26%, so all is well. Well, what we do is for our newsletter subscribers, we'll drill down into the numbers, and the big difference really to all of these things are we reporting average sales prices? Are we doing medians, or do we what the board calls a benchmark price? And the benchmark price in the last few months has been rising every single month, and it's certainly way up over last year. But the average price actually has been dropping in some areas like a stone since April. And so what we do is in my newsletter, we're doing it for 23 years. We look like the average price because the average price says what happened this particular month. And yes, sometimes a higher price distorts the average or a lower price, which the benchmark price tries to avoid. They take out the highest sales, the lowest sales, then they go into any given area and they take out how much do people pay for that bathroom or that bedroom and sort of the average area. Well, I much rather think in a market that we have right now, I want to know what's going on in my suburb right now.
Well, what kind of, give me an example of what kind of, we've seen a lot of sales declines there. Can you give me some of the numbers?
Sure. You look at the average price overall last year, that's for everything. In August last year was 905,000, and this year it's 850,700. Okay, so far so good. That's down 6% on the price. But in April it was 1.1 million, so it's down 23% on average right across the board. Well, you say these are all the averages, but let's take a look at the suburbs. On the east side, the average price was $1.4 million approximately this August. Last year it was $1.290 million, so it's 30% higher. But in April, it was $1.610 million, so it's 8% below what it was in April. And if I go down the list, Coquitlam is 12% lower than it was in April. West Van is down 23%. Now, maybe that's distorted by the very, very high prices. But my goodness, the average price now is $2.9 million. In April, it was $3.8 million. North Van is 12%. And so what I would urge any listener to do is sit down with your realtor, look at what was the median price in, say, in my area of Coquitlam, and what is the average price and what's the benchmark price, because what you want to know is what's happening in the market now, not what sort of has been averaged like a cost price index, the annual way, a basket of bedrooms and whatever is in there.
Okay, let me just shift gears a little bit. I mean, one aspect of the market that got so much play, of course, is Chinese buying. And they put the new 15% foreign sales tax on there. And I'm looking at Victoria's numbers. They're at record levels there. And I'm looking south of the border. I mean, it looks like the Chinese buyers have kind of gone to Seattle there. I mean, there'll be a ripple effect because, of course, when you just stick that tax in one area, at the very least, it's going to encourage people to look elsewhere.
Sure. I mean, I just wrote in my newsletter that the sucking sound you hear is billions of dollars from China going from Vancouver to Seattle. Actually, we interviewed Matthew Moore, which is an executive with the Jewway.com. You and I talked about this website before. And they say that the inquiries about Vancouver luxury properties have dropped 56% since the tax was imported. Wow. And the number of properties, he says they used to have 30 pages of properties for sale, dropped from about 3,000 that they had down to about 300. So, yes, so where they're looking now, like you said, they're looking at Seattle. He says it surpassed Los Angeles for China buyers and to a lesser extent Toronto, Calgary, and Ottawa. And he has all sorts of examples of people making money. And where do they go? Well, they go to Mercer Island, Kirkland, Bellevue, and central Seattle, much like Vancouver West Side or West Vancouver.
Yeah, it's, that's one of the things that, again, I started the show today with chatting about how governments cannot manage, cannot control the economy. And when the more efforts they do in that direction, usually the results are not very positive. And we've got just way too many historical advantages to ignore that. But one of the things that, of course, is the result is we forget that capital is mobile. So if you make it unattractive in one area, it's just going to get attractive in another, or they're going to search for another more attractive area. And that's why your talk about Seattle's kind of interesting, for, again, some diversification's sake when it comes to the Canadian dollar. Maybe people listening today, it doesn't matter if you're listening in Edmonton or Calgary, you kind of get that Vancouver area. Well, Seattle's kind of obviously only 2 hours away by car. So, it's sort of a comfortable market for us to be looking at.
Yeah, no question. But the other thing that's sort of interesting is these unintended consequences. And this executive said that it's really interesting. He gets a lot of inquiries about Seattle schools and universities, and he suggests that it might mean that in Vancouver, schools and universities might see a drop in the lucrative enrollment of offshore students. Because, if I'm going to buy my real estate, maybe I want to see where my kids can study. I still think Vancouver is a place of choice. We have a very large Asian population, but certainly the speculator, we're definitely driving him out of town.
That's a great stat you gave us, though, that the number of inquiries about luxury homes in the Vancouver area dropped 55%. That jumps out at me. You got any hot properties for us?
Yeah, well, we've looked at Seattle, and just in case you think it's all very expensive there, we found a very nice single-family residence, or at least the picture looks really nice. It's on a 10,000 square foot lot, 4-bedroom, 4 baths, a 2-car garage, and it's on at $299,980. Now, remember, that's U.S. dollars, so it's quite a bit more than that. And we found a condo. It's a 1,221 square foot condo, 3-bedroom, 2.5 baths. I guess we would call it a townhouse, has an attached garage, and that's on at $215,500 in Seattle.
Interesting stuff. Well, obviously, you can go to Jurock.com, JUROCK.com, check out any of the hot properties. In the meantime, Ozzie, go out and have a terrific long weekend.
Thank you very much, and I will. And remember, Mark Twain says, get your facts first, then you can distort them as you please.
I bet that's written in part.